So we're starting our keynote a little bit late today, but this is probably one of the more important keynotes that we have here. We're going to have Dino, who has been with the organization since probably the beginning, almost from the beginning. But he is the Chief Information Officer for the UN Joint Staff Pension Fund, and Dino leads the United Nations Digital Transformation Working Group. The group consists of the Chief Information Officers from all of the UN programs like the World Health Program, Food Program, World Health Organization, and global leaders rely on Dino for his knowledge and wisdom in technology, and we're very honored to have him deliver this keynote today. Dino.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being back. I understand that usually lunchtime is not the best opportunity, but thank you for being here. So today, I'm going to share with you fundamentally a story, which is about describing the journey that both personally as well as officially I went through in designing a solution for the United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund. Therefore, this is at the same time really personal for me because it has been an amazing journey and also met with great achievement and recognition, which I will share with you, as well as professionally, of course, because within my community, within the UN, I felt and I feel that I can confidently share with you that in this case, the UN practiced what preached. And so here it is. I'm going to walk you through the presentation. So this is the public announcement that in January 2021, we posted on our website, on the public internet page of the UN Pension Fund, announcing this solution, basically a solution aimed at creating and supporting digital identity for more than 80,000 beneficiaries of the UN pension that are located in more than 190 countries around the world. And you will appreciate the meaning of these numbers as I'm going to describe what are the challenges that exist in managing a process of this nature with this number. So, as I said, first and foremost, I'm really proud and humble to share with you that we recently received the 2021 award of the UN Secretary General on Innovation and Sustainability. That means a lot for myself. As I said, this is both personal and professional, as well as for my organization, for my constituents, and the stakeholders at large. This is just a few numbers about the UN Pension Fund for those that are not very familiar with the organization. As I mentioned, we have more than 80,000 beneficiaries around the world. We are composed of 25 member organizations. You will see in the next page, and you will recognize many of the logos associated with those organizations. And we have 134,000 participants, which basically means all the staff members of the United Nations system at large around the world contributing or paying into the UN Pension Fund, of course, in addition to the organization themselves. And as of December 2021, vis-a-vis the audited financial statement, the value of our fund was $90 billion. And it's a defined benefit plan. It's a very solid and sound fund, and indeed it has a 107% funded ratio. Here are our 25 member organizations. As alluded to before, you will recognize probably many of those logos. Some maybe a little bit less, but I can assure you they are all very active and very relevant in their field. So here it is. These were the 4 challenges that were presented to me in 2017 when I was appointed Chief Information Officer. Of all the processes, all the procedures of the fund, this was the only one that had not been automated, simply because the organization had not been able to find a reliable technology to support these proofs. And therefore, all of that you see there was handled with a form, with a piece of paper that was mailed once a year because of the labor-intensive processing of these pieces of paper, was mailed once a year by the UN Pension Fund to its 80,000 beneficiary, 190 countries, using 190 postal services. And therefore, you can appreciate how this process was often subject to delays and sometimes actually to lost documentation. And this had a tremendous impact on the beneficiary themselves, because after the second mailing that the UN did, once did not receive a proper response to the first mailing, the benefit payment got suspended. And people all of a sudden stopped receiving their benefit. And therefore, there was a lot of concern, a back and forth in identifying why the form was not returned or was never received. And this form basically required one simple action, a signature. And the signature was considered a proof of existence by the pension fund for that individual. So I framed the problem into its building blocks. First and foremost, prove identity and existence. Second of all, proof identity authentication. Second of all, proof of existence, proof of transaction, and proof of location. Therefore, from that real red box that you see there, that it's hosted in our offices both in New York and Geneva, where the lucky ones, the beneficiary residing in those cities, were able to actually sometimes come in person and insert the certificate, signed certificate into the box. We try to move everything into an app. And you will see how that was done. So here a little bit of background about why I mentioned that in this solution, the UN practiced what it preached. Because I took input, of course. I wanted to demonstrate that we were able to align ourselves and to implement directly the principle given by the United Nations Secretary General in its document, the Secretary General Strategy on New Technologies, and also has reflected in the Sustainable Development Goals, this is the 17 SDGs. We got also additional recognition, in addition, of course, to the one from the UN Secretary General. For those of you, unfortunately, this document is not readily publicly available, but for those of you that have a subscription with Gartner, you can download a case study that Gartner, again, in January 21, when we went live, issued on the case, on the solution. Other magazines that have acknowledged the solution are also the Investment and Pension from Europe. This is just a reference to introduce the theme of this event, how to go about selecting a blockchain infrastructure. So first and foremost, I asked myself whether indeed blockchain was the right solution for the challenges that I had in front of me. So, and again, I started my, my search for reliable and relevant terms of reference, which indeed led me to meet Gerard and become involved with GBA and ultimately also be involved with the development of the blockchain maturity model. First and foremost, I found with the World Economic Forum that there was a document indeed, some sort of a decision tree to help entity, to help organization to really question whether indeed blockchain was or is the right solution depending on the problem that you're facing. So, as I said, I wanted to walk you through the real journey that we went through. And I'm sharing here the slide that I used to present the proof of concept that we conducted in 2020. And this was a tremendous effort simply because 2020, as you may remember, was when the pandemic started. And we were absolutely unprepared. We were planning to go in the different parts of the world, in the offices, in the local office of the United Nations, meet with our beneficiary, and do on-site registration enrollment. All of a sudden, we were told, you're not going anywhere. nobody's flying, people stay home, you need to do this in a different way. So overnight, I had definitely had to acknowledge my colleagues in the United Nations International Computing Center, unicc.org, which is an entity within the UN system dedicated to the development and support of ICT. We worked together, we created a virtual scheduling application, and we created a video identification process with our call center, where our beneficiary had to make an appointment, scan their ID, go on a video call, and go through the process of identification. So the proof of concept was based in meeting the principle that I just showed you by the United Nations Secretary General on the use of innovation technology. So first and foremost, demonstrate that we were able to use an innovative technology, but at the same time in a secure manner. Second of all, demonstrate with practical data that indeed the application of that technology was valid, it was reliable, and finally that the technical feasibility of the solution could be supported and scaled over time. And here are the solutions. First and foremost, in order to confirm and demonstrate existence, liveliness of an individual, we adopted biometrics. And then I will explain further what were the challenges around adopting and using a biometric system to recognize the proof of existence. And the second thing was to make sure that in doing so, we were mindful of keeping that biometric data confidential and at all time integral, as well as enabling also the scalability of the application because, as I mentioned, we knew that this application was going to be used in parts of the world where the ICT infrastructure sometimes is suboptimal. So here's the diagram that shows how the solution was designed. So we had to use, because of the pandemic, our call center that entertained the calls of those who intended to enroll into the system. Therefore, they went through the initial identification steps. With that, we then capture the biometric profile only, and I repeat, only, this is a very critical point of our solution, only on the device of the user. So at no time we store or we transmitted biometric data over this system. We always made sure that 100% of the time, biometric data always remain under the sole and exclusive control of the individual, meaning on their phone. However, in order to make sure that all this process will be auditable, traceable independently by third parties, such as internal auditors, external auditors, or other inspection entity, we recorded every step of the way on the blockchain. And I will show you exactly also, speaking about infrastructure, which blockchain we adopted. So these, again, additional details about the face recognition captured at the beginning and the confirmation of proof of existence done on a regular basis. And an aside here, as I mentioned before, this process until now, until 2021, was conducted once a year because of the labor-intensive nature of sending, receiving, and scanning and processing pieces of paper. Now, nobody prevents us from using this system on a more frequent basis. Every month, prior to sending a payment, we could ask our user. We have not done that yet. So I wanted to make sure that that is not misunderstood. But the technology allows us to do that if we want to do so. So, talking about infrastructure, here we go. We adopted the Hyperledger Indy. Hyperledger Indy is a specific purpose-built blockchain for creating, managing, and supporting digital identities. There are additional components that are also provided by libraries in the Hyperledger areas. That's why I circled in yellow the two systems, and of course the HRSA, which is the part related to the key management, a cryptographic mechanism. And these are the criteria. So if there is one thing I really wanted to share in order to meet the expectation of this event today, is really the 10 criteria that we use to select Hyperledger Indy. So first and foremost, we needed to be in a platform that could allow us to manage a digital asset. In our case, that digital asset is digital identity. Second of all, create a permanent ledger. Create an immutable record of the event, whether it's the enrollment or whether it's the issuance of the proof of existence. Third of all, making sure that the on-chain data only contains public data. As I said before, the biometric profile remains on the device of the user. Only the outcome of processing the biometric, of verifying the biometric, is recorded on the blockchain. Using industry standard for cryptography, which indeed Hyperledger provides, and also use the privacy by design mechanism, and again, reference to making sure that at no time private data, or PII, are recorded on the blockchain. Moving on, also the possibility of embedding in the business logic the cryptographic verification of the data, as well as, in our case, for example, there is a lot of debate about performance of blockchain, a layer 2 solution, and so forth and so on. We had the privilege of not needing a very fast processing blockchain because, as I mentioned before, as of now, we only require this process to be done once a year. So for us, performance was not an issue. Indeed, confidentiality, integrity, security it is an issue. So not required to deliver fast processing performance. Not required to store large amount of data, because ultimately we only needed to have a confirmation of whether the result, the outcome of the biometric verification conducted on the device of the user was positive or negative. Therefore, we are not processing, we're not storing large amount of data, hence again the ability to use it in areas of the world that do not have a very strong ICT infrastructure. Finally, allow for full traceability and auditability of the transaction, and have a consensus protocol that at least will be in line with the most common ones, such as the redundant Byzantine fault tolerance protocol. So these are really the key element, the criteria that that drove our selection of the solution. Here, I'm just going to skip and go through these slides. These are from the Hyperledger that I included in my presentation simply to support and facilitate the visual understanding of how the solution works between identity issuer, identity holder, identity verifier, and the blockchain as a common denominator. So basically supporting the concept of self-sovereign identity. Again, here the various component. As I mentioned, we have the web-based administration backend that helps managing all the mechanism and the user, the mobile application layer, and the blockchain layer. And here are the components seen from a different perspective. Here, it's actually a real screenshot of the browser of the Indy scan, where the transaction can be identified, and each one of those fields can be understood, interpreted, and put into context vis-a-vis the auditability of the transaction themselves. Here is some of the lessons learned about the biometrics. I mentioned before that I was going to expand a little bit further. So basically, this slide and a few slides after this is just to say that we could not use the biometric capability that come out of the box of the typical devices on the market, iOS, Android, simply because they don't allow to have a certainty and visibility about how the algorithm actually work. And we couldn't vouch for the level of confidentiality, access to data, and so forth. So we built our own biometric machine learning algorithm. Here, again, this is basically the concept surrounding the selection and all the constraints that we put on ourselves just to justify and define the challenge that led ultimately to the development of our own biometric and facial recognition algorithm. This is, in technical terms, the product, the actual software that we use for the visual recognition as well as for the biometric recognition. So you will see that the OpenCV, TensorFlow, Keras, and so forth. So for those who have interest in a more technical component, this is a slide that gives those information. So finally, this brings me to also the role of block GBA and BMM. My biggest problem, as I shared yesterday in another occasion, was that because of my background in auditing, when this whole package was ready and we deployed it, my first question, now what? How to go back to my governing body that funded the project, to our stakeholders at large that started to be alarmed. Oh, the UN is using blockchain, a technology very well known for depleting the natural resources of the world. What about biometrics? We hear this bad story in the newspaper. So you can imagine how much I felt the need to really reassure governing bodies, end users, stakeholders, and so forth. So I started to go through everything I could find. ITU documentation on blockchain, ISO standard documentation on blockchain. And ultimately, I met Gerard, and I actually started to understand the value proposition of creating a common and shared set of terms of reference to at least, I don't want to say certified, but start speaking about maturity. Give an example of within a spectrum of certain type of controls that can be put in place, the BMM can help an organization to make that attestation with verifiable evidence and proof. So I think if there is one definitely value-added proposition of that is really to enable an organization to benchmark itself and its solution vis-a-vis a maturity model. So thank you, Gerard, thank you, the GBA, and to all the colleagues that worked with us. And in this regard, now I want to step out from my role of presenting my solution and give an acknowledgement to Alejandro Manduano, who has been working with us and has made tremendous progress in the Spanish language community. So Alejandro has translated the BMM model in Spanish. He is maintaining and created a website for the GBA in Spanish, and is supporting organization in the Spanish translation of any document that pertains to the BMM. And he also has a track record of other many initiatives that he has conducted in the technological world. So I wanted to include this reference and acknowledgement to Alejandro for the work that he has done and he's doing in the blockchain. With that, thank you very much, and if you have any questions, please feel free. I'll be more than happy to address them. Thank you.